Hey folks, this is Kalani. Devourer Demon Hunters are the newest specialization being added in the Midnight expansion, and with the alpha starting up we can take a closer look at all of their abilities, animations, talents and overall gameplay. In this video we'll go through how their rotation fits together, how the spec is shaping up so far, and highlight any major strengths or weaknesses that this third Demon Hunter specialization could have. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. Devourer Demon Hunters are a mid-ranged DPS spec. Most of their abilities have a 25-yard range, so you'll be hanging out with the Devastation Evokers for the most part. They use two main resources, Fury, which is your basic Builder-Spender style resource, as well as Soul Fragments. All damage you deal has a chance to generate a Soul Fragment, and certain abilities will generate or create Soul Fragments as well. You can pick them up by running close to them, or by using abilities that gather them up for you. Soul Fragments will also give you some Fury when picked up, and they fuel your most important abilities, so generating and collecting them will be a key part of your overall gameplay. Let's start by going over their basic abilities that will make up the majority of your rotation. Consume is your main filler spell. It has no cooldown, a short cast time, can be cast while moving, and will generate 13 Fury as well as 1 Soul Fragment, which we'll use to fuel some other important spells. The animation isn't super flashy, but it is kinda cool. You gather Void energy in both hands, and then there's a pulse of Void on your target when the cast finishes. Reap is going to be your spender style spell. You'll probably want to keep this one on cooldown and use it as often as you can. It's an instant cast spell. It can have up to 2 charges. You can talent it to generate Fury, and it will gather up to 4 nearby soul fragments, so you won't have to run around collecting your souls for the most part. This one has a pretty cool animation. You absorb nearby souls and then swing a void scythe and send a curved projectile towards your target. Very cool indeed. Now, Soul Immolation has a 1-minute cooldown, and instead of dealing damage to your enemies, this one actually just deals damage to you. It also generates Fury and 3 soul fragments over 5 seconds, so you're just burning away your health for some extra resources. Sounds exactly like what a Void-powered Demon Hunter would do. You can talent Soul Immolation to have a 30-second cooldown and 2 charges, or to become a passive effect that has a chance to trigger when casting a damaging spell. Void Ray is a void version of I-Beam, and it works in more or less the same way. You fire a straight line of crazy void energy towards wherever you're facing. It's got a 25-yard range, it doesn't have a cooldown, and you need at least 100 Fury to use it. Void Ray consumes 5 Fury every 0.1 seconds, and the effect will end after 2.7 seconds, or when you run out of Fury, whatever comes first. So you want to build up that Fury to Void Ray as often as possible. You're also going to start with Void Blade in the talent section, which is just the void version of Fell Blade and does exactly the same thing, so you dash to your target and deal some damage. There are a lot of talents that interact with Void Blade, but it seems like you'll basically be choosing between staying mostly mid-range and casting, or weaving in and out of melee depending on which talents you choose. Now, your big cooldown is Void Metamorphosis. You can only activate Void Metamorphosis when you have collected 50 souls, so the faster you can generate and collect souls, the faster you're going to get into your meta form. In this form, your abilities become enhanced and deal more damage. Void Ray no longer costs Fury, but instead slows your Fury drain rate, but it also comes with a short cooldown. And you also swap from the Builder-Spender gameplay into a race against your resource depletion gameplay that Shadow Priests have used for a while. So your Fury will continually drain, and when it hits 0 you'll drop out of meta, and then you're just starting the cycle all over again. So the goal is to stay in Metamorphosis as long as possible by generating as much Fury as you can for as long as you can. What's really interesting is that Void Metamorphosis doesn't have a cooldown at all, so the only thing limiting you from getting back into it is generating those 50 souls again. Now, staying in Void Metamorphosis is going to be important, mainly due to the last major ability, Collapsing Star. While you're in meta form, your meta button will change into Collapsing Star, which requires 30 souls to use. This is a huge AoE nuke that deals a bunch of damage, and it also looks really cool as well. Various talents will interact with Collapsing Star, but the most important one increases the damage of the spell each time that you cast it within a Void Metamorphosis. So the longer you can stay in meta and the more you cast Collapsing Star, the harder you're going to hit. But you will eventually get kicked out of your meta form to start the process all over again. Now, as for their mastery, Devourer Demon Hunters are going to be very similar to Havoc. It's just a damage boost to all cosmic damage that is further empowered when in Metamorphosis. And then obviously, because we share a class tree with Demon Hunters, you'll be picking up all the same kind of utility and defensive spells there, so things like Blur, Vengeful Retreat, Darkness, Imprison, all that good stuff. Something that is a little different about Devourer is that they're going to use an ability called Shift instead of Fell Rush. Shift is more like Heroic Leap or Infernal Strike, where you can target a specific location with your cursor and you more or less instantly zip right on over, so it's kind of a mix between Infernal Strike and Fell Rush. This gives you a lot of mobility, which is to be expected from a Demon Hunter specialization. And that's pretty much all of the abilities that you'll be using on a regular basis as a Devourer Demon Hunter. There are only 2 other active spells that you can pick up in the talent tree right now. One deals damage based on how much health you're missing, and then the other one is the Hunt. So you can pick up 2 more buttons to push, but that's currently the limit of how many spells or abilities you have access to as a Devourer Demon Hunter. So there's not a lot to work with. You are going to have half-empty bars as things stand right now. Honestly, that's kind of the case for a lot of other classes too, though. You'll see what we mean when we go over the major class changes coming in Midnight in another video. Now, as for their talent tree, you've got a pretty distinct split of how the talent tree progresses. The middle mainly deals with Metamorphosis and Collapsing Star, and a whole bunch of talents which buff it and do a bunch of things there, which I imagine most builds are going to really focus on, and they're going to pick a lot of these up. The right hand side is mostly about empowering Reap and Void Ray, as well as providing you with more souls to fuel your meta rampages. Eradicate is actually really cool. When you fully channel Void Ray, your Reap cooldown is reset, and your next Reap will deal AoE damage. And there are a bunch of other talents that provide bonuses from channeling Void Ray as well, so it works together to create a pretty fluid back and forth between those 2 main abilities, and you'll deal a whole bunch of AoE damage. And then the left hand side is a little bit weird. It focuses more on Void Blade and dashing into melee to deal some burst damage, and then Vengeful retreating back out. Your Void Blade can turn into Hungering Slash, which deals AoE damage, and you can talent to make your Vengeful retreat deal even more AoE damage right after that combo, so it's a bit of melee, a bit of ranged, and you'll be dashing in and out. And then Devourer actually has a preview of their Apex talents as well. These all tie into Collapsing Star, so when these are fully unlocked, Collapsing Star will always crit. Its damage is increased by your crit strike chance stat, so Devourer is going to be loving crit by the looks of things, and then entering Void Meta generates soul fragments and grants immediate access to Collapsing Star, so you can fire your first one off right away. I doubt we'll see any builds that ignore Apex talents almost across the board, as they seem to be designed to be incredibly powerful, but that then does dictate a lot of other talent choices too, because you're going to want to pick up everything that's relating to your Apex talent, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So that's the general setup for Devourer, but how does it actually play? I think it's quite smooth, to be honest, if a bit simple. You have 1 filler spell, 1 spender spell, 1 AoE nuke, and a major cooldown. The animations and spell effects are super cool, and it feels like you have access to a lot of AoE damage, so that's going to be a lot of fun in dungeons especially. I'm really enjoying the Void Ray into AoE Reap combo, and you can generate your Fury back super fast, so you actually have Void Ray up quite a lot of the time. The minigame of chasing your Fury resource while in meta form is also something I enjoy quite a bit. It's one of the main things I loved about Shadow Priest back when I was playing it as my main. You also have 2 stops for the Fury drain. It doesn't really drain while you're casting Collapsing Star or Void Ray, which gives you time for other abilities to come off cooldown to spam for more Fury, and that lets you hit a pause button on your Fury drain, which is really cool. Managing that Fury drain properly and staying in meta as long as possible is going to be the key to dishing out a bunch of damage, and it will be what separates the good Devourer Demon Hunters from the not so great ones. Being a mid-range DPS that can freely move for most of their casts is also going to be very powerful just by itself. There's a reason why Beast Mastery Hunters are played so often. You don't have to cram in with the melee and dodge all those pesky frontals, cleaves and swirlies, but then you also don't have to stand still to deal most of your damage. Having that freedom of ranged combat with melee movement is insane. You only really have to stand still for Void Ray and Collapsing Star, so it's pretty easy to stay out of danger while throwing out impactful spells. Now the pseudo melee talents are a bit weird to play. It definitely feels very Demon Hunter-y, and it actually looks really cool to dash in, deal that burst AoE damage, and then flip back out to continue your ranged rotation. The big problem is that Void Blade is on a pretty long cooldown. It's about 40 seconds right now, and there don't seem to be any talents in place to reset that ability or reduce the cooldown. There are a lot of class talents missing right now, so that could explain part of this problem, but you just drop so much damage and synergy from your ranged rotation to pick up these melee talents, and they only really provide a burst of damage every 40 seconds or so, and your ranged rotation becomes a lot less interesting and fun as a trade-off. So as it is right now, I don't really like how those talents play out, but that could be because we're missing big chunks of the class tree as I mentioned. Your hero talents are also going to weigh in on this decision, or I guess I should say dictate this decision. Devourer gets to choose between Fellscarred and Annihilator, but you might not actually have much of a choice depending on how you want to play. Right now, Fellscarred interacts with Void Blade and Hungering Slash to cause your Void Surges, so if you don't go down the left hand side of the talent tree and pick up Hungering Blades, you probably won't ever play Fellscarred. It also has a lot of interactions with the Hunt, and that's your capstone talent on the left hand side. So if you want to play Fellscarred, it looks like you'll have to play with those melee talents, and if you want to play those melee talents, you'll probably have to play Fellscarred. But then on the other side, if you want to stick with the ranged option, which is more fun and more flexible in my opinion, you don't really get anything out of Fellscarred, so you'll have to play Annihilator. That's not necessarily a bad thing, Annihilator is really cool, but there do seem to be very clear-cut decisions that have been made for you depending on which talents you want to play with. If you're curious about Annihilator, you'll be generating and spending stacks of a new buff called Voidfall. When you spend these stacks, you call down Void Meteors on your target that deal AoE damage. It looks really cool and definitely fits the theme of Void Demon Hunter quite well. There are various passive bonuses tied to your stacks like haste or damage reduction. You can call down meteors by using other spells and abilities. There are various boosts to things like Collapsing Star and Consume, and then the capstone talent just massively buffs every third Voidfall meteor to be bigger and deal way more damage. It fits in very nicely with the ranged playstyle for Devourer Demon Hunter. All in all, this first look at Devourer Demon Hunters has been a lot of fun. It's a highly mobile mid-range DPS spec which has the potential to be very flexible and very powerful. You have access to a lot of burst AoE damage, and even though the gameplay is quite simple, your major cooldown in Void Metamorphosis changes things up by giving you that resource chase mechanic. All of their abilities look really cool as well, so Demon Hunters should be pretty happy to have this Void-themed third specialization to add to their choices. But that's everything we know so far about Devourer Demon Hunters and how they play, so that's it for this video. What do you think from what you've seen so far? Does anything stand out as really cool, and are there any problems that you foresee this specialization may be running into? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can find links in the description or click the join button just below the video. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful in any way, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you're always kept up to date. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.